It was just another Tuesday morning in late spring. Sun high, sky clear. The kind of day that feels ordinary until it isn't. The parking lot of Midtown Auto Plaza shimmered under the heat. Rows of shiny sedans and SUVs lined up like soldiers waiting for inspection. Salesmen in short-sleeved button-downs and name tags stood near the entrance, sipping coffee from paper cups, laughing about last weekend's softball game. Everything felt routine, predictable, safe. Inside the showroom, the air conditioning hummed softly, fighting back the warmth creeping through the glass doors. The scent of new leather and floor wax hung in the air. A radio played low in the background, some classic rock station nobody really listened to but nobody ever turned off. It was the kind of place that tried hard to look successful, but carried a quiet weariness in its bones, like a suit that had been worn too many times without being cleaned. She walked in just after 10. No fanfare. No announcement. Just a woman in dark jeans, a crisp white blouse, and low-heeled loafers. Her hair was pulled back neatly, not fancy, just practical. She carried a small leather tote, not designer, but well-kept. She didn't glance around like a customer dazzled by the cars. Instead, she took in the room with quiet attention, the placement of the signs, the way the salespeople clustered near the finance office, the stack of brochures on the counter that looked untouched for weeks. She moved slowly toward the service desk near the back, where a young woman with tired eyes was filing paperwork. "Good morning," she said, voice calm and clear. "I was hoping to speak with someone about how things run here. Inventory, customer flow, that sort of thing." The receptionist blinked. "Oh, are you with corporate?" "No," she said with a small smile. "Just curious." That answer didn't sit right with the receptionist. People didn't just walk into a car dealership out of curiosity, unless they were either shopping or snooping. She hesitated, then called over her shoulder. "Rick, someone here asking about operations." From the back office, a man emerged, mid-50s, thick arms, salt and pepper hair slicked back, wearing a navy polo with the dealership logo stitched in gold thread. His name tag read, Rick, General Manager. He had the kind of confidence that came from decades of closing deals, shaking hands and believing he knew better than everyone else in the room. He sized her up in one glance. Not a buyer. Not dressed like someone who could afford a new truck. Not white, not male, not wearing a suit, so in his mind, not someone worth his time. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice friendly enough on the surface but with an edge underneath like he was already annoyed. "I was just looking around," she said. "I noticed your lot seems a bit light on mid-size sedans. Is that a supply issue or are you shifting focus to SUVs?" Rick frowned. That wasn't a question a casual visitor asked. That was a question someone in the business would ask. His guard went up. "Who are you again?" he said, crossing his arms. "Just someone interested in how dealerships operate," she replied evenly. "Right," he said, letting out a short laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "Look, lady, we're not a tour site. If you're not here to buy a car, I've got real work to do." She didn't flinch. "I understand you're busy, but I'm genuinely interested in your customer service approach. I saw your online reviews. Some mention long wait times, others say sales staff can be dismissive." Rick's jaw tightened. Now she was poking where it hurt. Reviews had been slipping lately. Corporate had sent a warning email just last week. "Listen," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice but not softening it. "I don't know what you're after, but this isn't the place for it. We've got customers who actually spend money here. People who belong." The words landed like a slap. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something deeper. Disappointment. Like she'd seen this before. Like she'd hoped, just this once, it might be different. "I see," she said quietly. "You see what?" He snapped, suddenly defensive. "You think you can walk in here, ask a bunch of questions like you own the place, and—" He stopped himself. But the damage was done. She didn't argue. Didn't raise her voice. Just nodded once, turned, and walked back toward the glass doors. The bell above them jingled as she stepped outside into the bright sunlight. Inside, Rick exhaled sharply, muttering to the receptionist. Probably working for one of the competitors. Trying to dig up dirt. He shook his head like he'd just dodged a bullet. Keep an eye out for people like that. They always show up looking harmless. But she wasn't working for a competitor and she wasn't harmless. What Rick didn't know, what nobody in that dealership knew, was that just 3 days earlier, a quiet transaction had been finalized in a downtown law office. A family investment group, built over 2 generations, had purchased a controlling stake in Midtown Auto Plaza. The previous owner, tired and ready to retire, had accepted the offer without fanfare. The new ownership wanted to observe before announcing anything. They wanted to see the place as it really was, not dressed up for a press release, but in its raw, unfiltered truth. And so she'd come alone. No entourage, no title, just herself, watching, listening. She'd chosen that Tuesday morning because it was ordinary. Because on ordinary days, people show who they really are. As she walked to her car, a modest but well-maintained sedan parked at the far end of the lot, she didn't look back. But her mind was already working. Not on revenge, not on drama. On responsibility, because now she knew this place wasn't just underperforming. It was broken in ways that didn't show up on balance sheets. Back inside, the sales team had already moved on. One guy was showing a couple a red pickup truck. Another was on the phone promising a one-time-only deal. Rick poured himself another cup of coffee, chuckling about how he'd shut down that nosy woman. Life went on like nothing had happened, but something had. Outside, she got into her car, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. The dealership shrank in her rear-view mirror, just another box of glass and steel under the midday sun. But in her mind, it was already changing. She drove slowly through the city streets, past schools letting out for lunch, past small shops with hand-painted signs, past bus stops where people waited in the heat. She thought about the young woman at the front desk, how she'd looked down when Rick raised his voice. She thought about the older black man she'd seen earlier, sitting in the service waiting area, ignored by staff while white customers were greeted immediately. It wasn't just about one rude comment. It was about a culture, a system, a way of doing things that made some people feel welcome and others feel like intruders in their own town. By the time she reached her office, a quiet space on the 12th floor of a building downtown, her decision was made. She wouldn't announce herself tomorrow or the next day. She'd wait. She'd gather more. Because when she did step forward as the owner, she wanted to do it right, not with anger but with clarity. Not to shame one man, but to rebuild something better. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and pulled up the dealership's employee files. She scrolled past sales records and inventory reports and went straight to the section labeled Customer Feedback Unresolved. There were dozens of entries, many from women, many from people of color, complaints about being followed in the showroom, about being quoted higher prices than their white friends, about being told, "We don't finance people with your credit history," without even checking. Each one felt like a stone added to a growing weight. She leaned back in her chair and stared out the window. The city stretched below, alive, messy, full of stories, and somewhere in it a car dealership stood, unaware that everything was about to change. Because the woman Rick had just thrown out? She owned the place, and she wasn't coming back as a visitor. She was coming back as the boss. But for now, she stayed quiet, letting the truth settle, letting the moment breathe, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, knowing you'll return on your own terms. And when she did, the whole place would have to look her in the eye, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as the person who held their future in her hands. The sun dipped lower in the sky. Somewhere a phone rang in the dealership. A customer signed papers on a new lease. A mechanic tightened a bolt under a hood. Life kept moving, unaware of the quiet storm gathering just beyond the horizon. But storms don't always roar. Sometimes, they begin with a single step out a glass door and a promise, unspoken but firm. This ends now. The next morning came soft and gray, the kind of day that feels like the world is holding its breath. Rain hadn't fallen yet, but the air was thick with it, pressing against windows and skin alike. Inside the downtown office building, 12 floors up, the woman sat at her desk with a steaming mug of tea and a stack of files spread out before her like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't wanted to solve, but now had to. She hadn't slept much. Not because she was angry, though the sting of yesterday's dismissal still lingered, but because her mind wouldn't stop turning over what she'd seen. The way the staff avoided eye contact with certain customers, the way the general manager's voice changed when he spoke to people who didn't look like him. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, and that made it worse, because quiet bias is harder to prove. harder to fix and easier to ignore, until someone refuses to look away. She picked up the acquisition agreement again, even though she'd read it a dozen times. The ink was dry. The money had cleared. The keys, figuratively speaking, were hers. Midtown Auto Plaza now belonged, in majority, to the investment group she led. It hadn't been a whim. It had been a careful decision, made after months of research. The dealership was struggling, not failing, but fading. Sales were flat. Employee turnover was high. Customer satisfaction scores had been slipping for 2 years straight. On paper, it was a turnaround opportunity. In person, it was something deeper. A place where dignity had been traded for convenience. She opened her laptop and clicked into the internal HR portal. Access granted the moment the deal closed. She scrolled through employee records, not looking for resumes, but for patterns. Complaints, warnings, promotions that never came. She found them quickly. 3 formal complaints against the general manager in the past 18 months, all from women, all dismissed as misunderstandings. One from a longtime service advisor who'd quit without notice last fall. In her exit interview, she'd written, "I love cars. I hate how I'm treated here." The woman closed her eyes for a moment. She'd heard that before in other industries in other cities. It was never just about one job. It was about how people are made to feel small, day after day, until they believe they don't belong. Downstairs in the city, the rain finally began. Light at first, then steady. People hurried under awnings, shook out umbrellas, cursed the weather. At Midtown Auto Plaza, the morning shift started like any other. The general manager arrived in his black pickup, coffee in hand, already barking orders before he even stepped inside. "Where's the new shipment of Tacomas?" He called out to a young salesman still wiping dew off a windshield. "Not in yet." "Rick," the kid said, flinching slightly. "Well, call the distributor. Again. And tell finance to stop approving loans for people with credit scores under 620. We're not a charity." A few heads nodded. No one argued. That was how it worked here. His word was law, and questioning it meant you'd be labeled not a team player. Later, in the break room, the same young salesman mentioned the woman from yesterday. "She asked weird questions," he said, peeling the foil off a yogurt cup, "like about inventory turnover and customer wait times." "Who does that?" Rick snorted, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "Probably some corporate spy. Or worse, someone from that new dealership opening up on Elm Street, trying to see how we operate so they can copy us." "She didn't seem like a spy," the receptionist said quietly, stirring sugar into her tea. "She seemed serious." Rick shot her a look. "Serious about what?" "Wasting my time? I've got real customers to deal with. People who actually buy cars, not stand around asking questions like they own the place." He said it with a laugh, but there was an edge to it, a defensiveness that surprised even him. Maybe because deep down he knew something was off. Maybe because for a split second yesterday he'd felt like he was the one being judged, but he pushed the thought away. He'd been running this place for 12 years. He knew what worked. He knew what didn't. And he sure as hell didn't need some stranger, especially not that kind of stranger, telling him how to do his job. Back downtown, the woman finished her notes. She'd compiled a list. Names of staff who'd filed complaints, dates of unresolved incidents, quotes from customer reviews that painted a consistent picture. She wasn't collecting evidence to fire people. She was collecting truth to rebuild something better. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in months. "It's me," she said when the call connected. "I saw it. Just like we feared." The voice on the other end was calm, older, steady, and it's worse than the report suggested. "It's not just poor management. It's a culture. People are scared to speak up." A pause. Then, "What do you want to do?" She looked out the window. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. Puddles shimmered on the street below. "I don't want to burn it down," she said. "I want to fix it. But I can't fix it if I pretend it's not broken." "Then don't pretend," the voice said simply. "Lead." She hung up, took a deep breath, and opened her calendar. She typed in a new event for the next morning. All staff meeting, leadership announcement. No details. Just time and place. She wouldn't show up as a stranger this time, she'd show up as the owner. But before that, she needed to understand the people who actually kept the place running, the ones who showed up every day, Fixed engines, filed paperwork, greeted customers with tired smiles. The ones who probably knew more about what was wrong than any report ever could. So she made another call, this time to the head of human resources at the investment firm. "I need you to reach out to every current employee," she said. "Not through email, not through Rick, directly. Tell them there will be a confidential, optional one-on-one meeting this week with new leadership. No managers present. No consequences. Just a chance to speak freely." "Some might not believe it," the HR lead said. "Then we'll have to earn their trust," she replied. "Starting now." That afternoon, she drove back to the dealership, not to go inside, but to watch. She parked across the street, engine off, rain tapping gently on the roof. She saw a young woman in coveralls come out for a smoke break, shoulders slumped. She saw an older man in the service bay wave patiently at a customer whose car wouldn't start. She saw the general manager stride out to greet a well-dressed couple, smiling wide, hand extended, voice warm in a way she hadn't heard yesterday. It was all there. The performance, the reality, the gap between them. She stayed for an hour unnoticed. Then she drove away, her heart heavy but clear. That evening, she met with her legal advisor over video call. They went over employment law, termination protocols, and the importance of due process. "Even if he's done wrong," the lawyer said, "we can't act on emotion. We need documentation. We need fairness." "I'm not looking to punish," she said. "I'm looking to reset. But resetting means some people might not fit in the new version." "Understood," the lawyer nodded. "Just make sure the path is clean." She ended the call and sat in the quiet of her apartment. No TV, no music, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. She thought about her grandfather, who'd started the family business with a single repair shop and a promise to treat every customer like family, no matter their skin color, their accent, or how much money they had in their pocket. He used to say, "A business isn't bricks and signs. It's people. And if you lose the people, you've lost everything." She hadn't realized until now how deeply she carried those words. The next morning, before sunrise, she printed out a single sheet of paper. On it, she wrote 3 things. Respect is non-negotiable. Everyone's voice matters. We serve the community, not just the customers who look like us. She folded it and put it in her jacket pocket. At the dealership, rumors were already swirling. Someone had seen an email about a surprise meeting. Someone else heard corporate was sending a new manager. The general manager scoffed. "Probably just another consultant who'll tell us to smile more and leave in a week." He didn't worry. He'd survived plenty of new directions before. They always faded. The real work, the selling, the closing, the numbers never changed. What he didn't know was that this time, the change wasn't coming from corporate. It was coming from the woman he'd thrown out, and she wasn't coming to consult. She was coming to lead. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the showroom floor, the staff began to gather in the small conference room near the back. Chairs were pulled out, coffee was poured, nervous jokes were made. Nobody knew what to expect except one person, and she was already on her way. Her car moved through the quiet streets, steady and sure. No sirens, no drama, just a woman heading to work, finally fully on her own terms. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing, and somewhere a door was about to open, not to shut someone out, but to let something new in. The morning air outside Midtown Auto Plaza felt different. Lighter, somehow, though the sky was the same pale blue as always. Inside, the usual pre-shift chatter was quieter than normal. People moved with a little more caution, glancing at the closed conference room door like it might open and change everything. And in a way, it would. The general manager stood near the coffee machine, arms crossed, trying to look relaxed. "Probably just another boring update from corporate," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They'll drone on about customer experience for an hour, hand out some useless pamphlets, and we'll be back selling cars by lunch." He chuckled, but his eyes kept flicking toward the hallway. Nobody laughed with him. Not really. There was a tension in the room, a feeling that something unusual was about to happen. Maybe it was the email that had gone out the night before, short and direct. All staff, mandatory meeting 9 a.m., conference room. Attendance required, well, no explanation. No sender name listed, just leadership. That was strange. Corporate emails always came with logos, titles, long signatures. This one felt personal. At exactly 8:58 a.m., a black sedan pulled into the employee parking lot. It wasn't flashy, just clean, well-kept, the kind of car someone drives because it works, not to show off. The woman stepped out wearing a navy blazer over a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, her expression calm. She didn't rush. She didn't look around nerveled. She walked like she belonged because she did. She entered through the service entrance this time. Not the front doors where customers came in, but the side door used by mechanics and delivery drivers. Few people saw her. Those who did didn't recognize her from yesterday. To them, she was just another visitor, maybe from finance or HR. But when she reached the hallway leading to the conference room, she paused, took a breath, straightened her jacket. Then she opened the door. The room fell silent. 25 employees, salespeople, service advisors, finance clerks, even the detailer who usually stayed in the back washing cars, sat in mismatched chairs arranged in a loose circle. At the front, near the whiteboard covered in old sales targets, stood the general manager. He turned, expecting a corporate rep in a stiff suit. Instead, he saw her. His face went slack. His coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence like a held breath. Then she stepped fully inside and closed the door behind her. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady, clear, and quiet enough that everyone leaned in to hear. "Thank you for being here." She didn't walk to the front like a boss taking charge. She moved to the center of the circle, standing among them, not above them. "I know most of you don't know me," she began, "but I've known about this dealership for a while. And 3 days ago, my company finalized the purchase of Midtown Auto Plaza. I am now the majority owner." A ripple went through the room. Eyes widened. Someone dropped a pen. The general manager's knuckles turned white around his coffee cup. She didn't pause for reaction. She kept going. "Yesterday I came here as a visitor. I didn't tell anyone who I was because I wanted to see this place as it really is, not how it's presented in reports or meetings. But on an ordinary Tuesday morning, she looked around, making eye contact with as many people as she could. Some looked down. Others met her gaze, curious, wary. I asked a few questions about inventory, about customer service, about how things run, and I was told very clearly that I didn't belong here." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. But everyone in the room felt the weight of those words. She turned slightly, just enough to face the general manager directly, but not aggressively. "Just honestly, you told me of people who actually spend money here. People who belong." She repeated his words exactly, without mockery, without anger. Just truth. He opened his mouth to explain, to apologize, to deny, but no sound came out. "I left," she continued. "Not because I was offended, though I was. I left because I needed to decide what kind of owner I wanted to be. Someone who ignores what's broken, or someone who fixes it." She let that hang in the air for a moment. "Today I'm choosing to fix it." She walked slowly to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. She didn't erase the old sales goals. She wrote 3 new lines beneath them. "Respect is required, always. Every customer deserves fair treatment, no exceptions. Your voice matters here, yours, not just the loudest." Then she turned back. "I'm not here to fire everyone. I'm not here to tear this place down. But I am here to make sure that no one, employee or customer, ever feels unwelcome because of who they are." She looked at the general manager again. "What happened yesterday wasn't just rude. It was a symptom of a deeper problem. And if we don't address it, this business will keep losing good people and good customers until there's nothing left to save." He finally found his voice. I didn't know who you were," he stammered. If you had," she interrupted gently but firmly, "would you have treated me differently? Or would you have treated everyone the same way you treated me, only worse because they don't own the place?" He had no answer. She didn't wait for one. "Starting today," she said, turning back to the group, "we're doing things differently. First, I'll be meeting with each of you, one-on-one, over the next 2 weeks. Not as your boss. As someone who wants to listen. You can say anything. Ask anything. Complain, suggest, share what's working or what's not. These meetings are confidential. No managers will be present. And nothing you say will affect your job, unless you tell me something that puts others at risk." A few people exchanged glances. One young woman in the back nodded almost imperceptibly. Second, she continued, we're launching a full review of our customer service policies. Not just the written ones, the real ones. How we greet people, how we quote prices, how we handle complaints. If there's bias in our process, we're going to find it and fix it. She paused, then added, and third, starting next month, we're partnering with the local community college to create an auto tech internship program. Priority will go to students from underrepresented backgrounds, because this industry needs more voices, more perspectives, more people who know what it feels like to be told they don't belong, and prove that wrong every single day. This time, someone actually smiled. A mechanic in grease-stained coveralls sat up straighter. She looked around the room again. I know change is hard. I know some of you have been here for years and are used to how things are. But how things are isn't working, not for everyone. And if we only care about the people who've always been welcome here, we're failing the community we're supposed to serve. Then she did something unexpected. She walked over to the general manager, not to confront him, but to stand beside him. I don't believe people are bad, she said, her voice softer now. I believe systems make it easy for good people to do bad things without even realizing it. Maybe you thought you were protecting the business yesterday, but protection shouldn't mean exclusion. She turned to him. You've been here a long time. You know this place better than anyone. So I'm giving you a choice. Help me rebuild it the right way or step aside. He stared at her, stunned. He'd expected yelling, accusations, a firing on the spot. Not this quiet offer of partnership wrapped in accountability. I want to stay, he said, voice rough. I didn't mean, you don't have to explain right now, she said. But if you stay, things change. Starting with how you speak to people. Starting with how you listen. He nodded slowly, eyes downcast. Okay, she turned back to the group. None of this happens overnight. But it starts today. With honesty. With courage. With all of us. Then she did something else no one expected. She pulled a chair into the circle and sat down. I'm not giving a speech, she said. I'm starting a conversation. Who wants to go first? Silence. Then from the back, a soft voice. What if we've complained before? And nothing happened? It was the receptionist, the same one who'd been at the front desk yesterday. The woman met her eyes. Then this time will be different. Because I'm not just listening, I'm acting, another voice. Will we actually get the training you promised? Or is this just talk? Good question, she said. Yes, mandatory, paid during work hours. And if it feels like a waste of time, you tell me and we'll fix the training too. A mechanic raised his hand. What about the guys in the shop? We never get included in these meetings. You will now, she said. Every department. Every role. Because this place doesn't run on sales alone. It runs on oil changes, tire rotations, clean windshields, and people who show up even when it's raining. You matter just as much. One by one, questions came, hesitant at first, then bolder. Concerns about pay, about overtime, about customers who yell, about managers who play favorites. She didn't have all the answers. But she took notes. She asked follow-ups. She said, I don't know, but I'll find out more than once, and through it all, the general manager stood off to the side. Arms no longer crossed, watching not with defiance, but with something like dawning understanding. The meeting lasted an hour and a half, longer than scheduled, but no one left. When it finally ended, people didn't rush out. They lingered, talked in small groups. Some approached her to say thank you. Others just looked at her like they were seeing the dealership and maybe themselves in a new light. As the room emptied, the general manager finally walked over. I'm sorry, he said, quietly so only she could hear. She looked at him. Sorry is a start. Action is what matters, he nodded. Tell me what to do. Start by apologizing to the people you've dismissed, she said. Not because I told you to, because it's right. He swallowed hard. Okay. She stood, gathered her notes, and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned back. One more thing, she said. From now on, we don't say people who belong, we say everyone is welcome. There's a difference. Then she walked out, not through the service entrance this time, but through the main showroom, past the gleaming cars, past the front desk, out into the sunlight. Outside, a customer was arguing with a salesman about a warranty. The woman paused, watched for a moment. Then she kept walking to her car. But something had shifted. Inside, the receptionist straightened the brochures on the counter. this time with care. The young salesman who'd been nervous yesterday stood a little taller. The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag and went back to the shop whistling softly. And the general manager? He walked to his office, closed the door, and sat at his desk for a long time. Not planning his next sale. Not checking inventory. Just thinking. About the woman he'd turned away. About the business he thought he knew. About the chance he'd almost thrown away. By lunchtime, word had spread beyond the dealership. A customer mentioned it to a friend. A service advisor texted her sister. By evening, a local news blog had picked up a tip. New owner takes over Midtown Auto. Promises major changes. But the real story wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments. The first honest conversation between a manager and his team. The relief in a receptionist's shoulders. The hope in a mechanic's eyes. Because sometimes, change doesn't come with sirens or speeches. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, sits in a circle and asks, "Who wants to go first?" And when someone finally speaks, everything begins to heal. The weeks that followed weren't filled with dramatic showdowns or sudden firings. There were no shouting matches in the parking lot, no viral videos, no overnight miracles. Real change, the kind that lasts, doesn't happen that way. It happens in small moments. Quiet conversations, revised policies, second chances given and taken. The first thing that shifted was the air inside the dealership. It wasn't just cooler from the AC anymore. It felt lighter, like someone had opened a window that had been sealed shut for years. People started looking each other in the eye again. Not just the sales team, but the detailers, the finance clerks, the mechanics who used to eat lunch alone in the shop. They weren't just coworkers anymore. They were part of something being rebuilt together. The new owner kept her word. She met with every single employee, one by one, in a small office near the back that had once been used for storage. She moved out the old boxes of outdated brochures and brought in a comfortable chair, a small table, and a box of tissues, just in case. Some meetings lasted 10 minutes. Others went over an hour. She listened more than she spoke. She took notes by hand in a simple notebook with a worn cover. And she never interrupted one mechanic, a man who'd worked there for 14 years but had never been invited to a single management meeting, told her how customers would sometimes refuse to believe he was the technician, asking to speak to the real mechanic or someone who knows what they're doing. He said it with a tired laugh, like it was normal. She didn't laugh. She wrote it down, and the next week, name tags for all service staff were updated to include job titles in bold: lead technician, master diagnostician, certified brake specialist. Another employee, a young woman in finance, admitted she'd been told to quote higher interest rates to certain customers just to be safe. When asked who said that, she hesitated, afraid of backlash. The owner didn't push. Instead, she implemented a new pricing transparency system. Every customer received a printed breakdown of their quote before signing anything, with clear explanations of fees and rates. No more backroom adjustments, no more special discretion. Meanwhile, the general manager, still in his role but under close review, was doing something few thought possible. He was changing. Not all at once and not perfectly, but steadily. He attended every DEI training session, even the ones held after hours. He sat in the back, arms uncrossed, taking notes. He started asking his team, "How can I support you better?" Instead of, "Why isn't this done yet?" One afternoon, he saw a customer, a woman in a wheelchair struggling to get out of her car near the service bay. Without thinking, he walked over, opened the door wider, and waited while she transferred to her chair. It was a small thing, but the service advisor watching from the window nearly cried. She'd never seen him do that before. He also made a point to find the receptionist, the one who'd been at the front desk the day everything changed, and apologized. Not in front of everyone. Not as a performance, just quietly during a slow Tuesday morning. "I should have listened," he said. "I should have treated you like you mattered, because you do." She nodded, didn't say much, but the tension between them eased like a knot finally loosening. The owner didn't stop at internal changes. She knew trust had to be earned outside the dealership too, so she launched the Community First initiative, just as she'd promised. Every first Saturday of the month, the service bays opened early for free oil changes and safety inspections for seniors, teachers, and essential workers. No appointments needed, no sales pitch, just help. The first community day drew a line around the block. People came not just for the free service, but because they'd heard something was different. A retired schoolteacher brought her old sedan in, skeptical at first. But when the technician explained every issue clearly, no jargon, no pressure, and even tightened a loose mirror for free, she left with tears in her eyes. "I haven't felt respected at a car place in 20 years, she told the owner, who was handing out bottled water in the parking lot. Word spread fast. Local radio picked up the story. A neighborhood Facebook group lit up with posts. "Went to Midtown today, actual human beings working there now. And then they fixed my brake light for free and didn't try to sell me a new engine. What is this magic?" Sales didn't skyrocket overnight, but they steadied. More importantly, customer retention improved. People came back. Not just because of the cars, but because they felt seen. Behind the scenes, the owner worked with HR and legal to create a formal process for handling complaints. Real ones, not just brushed off notes in a file. A new suggestion box went up in the break room. But it wasn't just a box. Every week, the owner read every slip herself. And every Friday, she posted anonymous summaries on a bulletin board titled, "Your Voice, Our Action." One week, someone wrote, "Why do only sales get bonuses? The shop works just as hard." The next month, a new team-based incentive program rolled out, rewarding service, sales, and admin equally for customer satisfaction scores. It wasn't perfect. There were bumps. One longtime salesman quit, muttering about too much hand-holding. Another tried to bypass the new pricing rules and was put on a performance plan. Change made some people uncomfortable, especially those who'd benefited from the old way of doing things. But for every person who left, 2 more stepped up. The young receptionist started leading the weekly team huddles. The mechanic who'd been ignored for years became a mentor in the new internship program. Even the general manager began mentoring new hires, not on how to close a deal fast, but on how to listen first. The internship program itself became a quiet triumph. The first group of students, 5 of them from the local community college, showed up nervous, dressed in borrowed coveralls, unsure if they'd be welcomed. But from day one, they were treated like part of the team. They shadowed technicians, learned diagnostic software, even helped detail cars. One student, a young woman who'd grown up fixing her family's truck in the driveway, asked a question during a team meeting that led to a faster way to test battery systems. The owner made sure everyone knew it was her idea. At the end of the 8-week program, 3 of the 5 were offered part-time jobs. The owner shook each of their hands. "This industry needs you," she told them. "Not just your skills, your perspective." Back in her downtown office late one evening, she reviewed the dealership's latest customer satisfaction survey. Scores had jumped 32% in 6 weeks. Comments included, "Felt like I was talking to humans, not sales robots." And, "Finally, a place that doesn't make me feel dumb for not knowing car stuff." She smiled, but it was tired. This work was harder than buying the place. Buying was a signature. Leading was a daily choice. Her phone buzzed. A text from the general manager, something that would have been unthinkable 2 months ago. "We had a customer today who reminded me of you. Asked smart questions. I didn't shut her down. I listened. She bought a car. Said she'd been to 3 other dealerships and only felt welcome here. Just wanted you to know." She typed back, "Thank you. That's why we're doing this." She didn't reply with praise or instruction, just acknowledgement. Because real change isn't about being perfect. It's about trying again and again to be better than you were yesterday. The next week, the owner held a small gathering in the showroom after hours. Just staff, no customers, no cameras. She ordered pizza, set up folding chairs, and stood in front of the same whiteboard where she'd written her 3 rules on day 1. "I didn't come here to fix a business," she said, holding a paper plate with a slice of pepperoni. "I came here to restore something that was lost, respect. For customers, for each other, for the work itself." She looked around at the faces. Some she'd known for months, others just weeks, but all part of the same story now. "We're not done," she added. "There will be hard days. There will be mistakes. But as long as we keep listening, keep learning, and keep choosing people over profit when it matters, that's how we win." Afterward, people stayed late, talking, laughing, cleaning up together. The general manager helped stack chairs. The receptionist played music from her phone, old Motown, the kind that makes you sway without thinking. For the first time in years, the dealership didn't feel like a place people escaped from at 5 p.m. It felt like a place they belonged. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Cars passed by, headlights cutting through the dusk. Somewhere down the road, a new customer was probably deciding which dealership to visit tomorrow. And for the first time in a long time, Midtown Auto Plaza was ready, not just to sell a car, but to welcome a person. Because that's what this was really about. Not engines or warranties or monthly quotas, but people. Real, messy, hopeful people trying to do better, together. And in that ordinary parking lot under an ordinary sky, something extraordinary was quietly growing. Trust. 6 months later, the parking lot of Midtown Auto Plaza looked the same from the outside. Same rows of cars, same sign with peeling letters, same patch of asphalt where the oil stain never quite washed out. But step inside and everything felt different. Not because of new paint or fancy furniture, but because of the way people moved through the space with purpose, with ease, with a quiet sense of belonging. The showroom buzzed, not with the forced energy of sales pressure, but with the steady hum of real work. A customer sat at a desk with a finance advisor, both leaning over a tablet, pointing at numbers and laughing about how confusing car loans could be. In the service bay, a young intern in crisp coveralls explained a brake issue to an older man, using a diagram on her phone. He nodded, not because he understood every word, but because he felt heard. At the front counter, the receptionist, no longer just answering phones but now coordinating customer experience, greeted a woman who just walked in. "Good morning. Are you here for your appointment or just browsing?" The woman smiled. "Actually, I'm here about the internship program. I saw it on the community board at the college." Before the receptionist could answer, another voice came from behind the service desk. "I'll take that one." It was the owner. She'd been in the back reviewing inventory reports, but she always made time for anyone asking about the program. She walked over, wiping her hands on a shop towel. She'd been helping test a new diagnostic tool with the tech team. "You're interested in the auto tech internship?" she asked, her tone warm but not overeager. "Yes," the young woman said, shifting her weight. She looked nervous, eyes darting around like she wasn't sure she was in the right place. "I've been working on my cousin's car for years, but I don't have formal training. I wasn't sure if I'd qualify." The owner didn't offer empty reassurance. She didn't say, "Of course you belong," like it was a slogan. Instead, she pulled up a chair and sat down at the same level. "Tell me your name," she said. "I'd like to remember it." The young woman blinked, surprised. "It's Lena." "Lena," the owner repeated, like she was filing it away for good. "We don't care about fancy degrees here. We care about curiosity, honesty, and whether you're willing to get your hands dirty. You've already got 2 of those just by showing up today." Lena relaxed just a little. I've never seen many people like me in shops like this." "I know," the owner said simply. "That's why we started the program." She handed Lena an application, not a stack of papers, but a single sheet with clear questions. "What got you interested in cars? What do you hope to learn? What would make you feel welcome here?" "No right answers," the owner added. "Just your truth." As Lena filled it out, the owner watched her, not with judgment, but with recognition. She saw herself in that hesitation, that quiet hope mixed with doubt. And she knew this wasn't just about training a mechanic. It was about telling someone, without words, "You're allowed to be here." That small moment was the heart of everything that had changed, because the real victory wasn't in the numbers, though sales were up 18%. Customer satisfaction had hit an all-time high, and employee turnover had dropped to nearly 0. The real victory was in the everyday interactions that used to be rare and were now routine. A white customer asking a black technician for advice without second-guessing his expertise. A female sales advisor closing a deal on a heavy-duty truck without being told that's more of a man's vehicle. A Spanish-speaking family getting documents in their language without having to ask twice. Even the general manager had found his place, not as the loud, all-knowing boss, but as a steady presence who mentored new hires on ethics, not just commissions. He still made mistakes. Last month, he'd accidentally quoted an older customer a higher rate out of habit. But instead of covering it up, he caught himself. corrected it on the spot and reported it to the owner. She didn't punish him. She thanked him for choosing integrity over ego. Now he often sat in on the weekly voice of the customer meetings, where real feedback, good and bad, was read aloud and discussed as a team. One recent comment had said, "Your staff remembered my dog's name from last time." That's wild. They'd all laughed, but it stuck with them, because it wasn't about the dog. It was about being seen as a person, not a sale. The dealership had also become a hub for the neighborhood. The monthly community day had grown into a full Saturday event. Free car checks, kids' activities, coffee from a local black-owned cafe that set up a stand in the lot. People came even if they didn't need service, just to connect. A retired firefighter started bringing his classic Mustang for show and tell. A high school robotics team used the empty corner of the lot for test runs. The place wasn't just selling cars anymore, it was part of the community's rhythm. One afternoon, the owner stood near the entrance watching it all unfold. A father taught his daughter how to check tire pressure. Two mechanics debated the best way to fix a stubborn sensor. The receptionist handed a tired-looking woman a bottle of water and said, "Your car's almost ready. Want to sit down?" It was ordinary. And that was the miracle. She thought back to that first Tuesday. The heat, the dismissal, the quiet walk back to her car. She hadn't come here to prove a point or shame anyone. She'd come because she believed a business could be both profitable and kind, efficient and fair, strong and gentle all at once. And now, 6 months in, it was happening. Not perfectly, but genuinely. Later that week, the general manager approached her during a slow afternoon. He held a folder. "I finished the review," he said. "All the old complaints, the unresolved issues. I went through everyone. Talked to the people involved where I could. Wrote personal apologies where it made sense." She took the folder, flipped through it. Handwritten notes, follow-ups, action steps. "This is good work," she said. "I couldn't have done it without you pushing me," he admitted. "But more than that, I couldn't have done it without realizing I was part of the problem." She looked at him. "You're not the problem. You were part of a system. Now you're part of the solution." He nodded, then hesitated. "There's one more thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his old name tag, the one with just his first name and title. He handed it to her. "I'd like a new one," he said. "One that says Team Lead, Customer Experience, and if that's okay?" She smiled. "More than okay." The next day, new name tags arrived for the whole staff, not just names and titles, but a small line at the bottom. "Proud to serve our community." No grand announcement. No press release. Just a quiet upgrade that meant everything. As summer turned to fall, the internship program welcomed its third cohort. This time, applications came from 3 counties over. One student drove an hour each way because, as she put it, "Nowhere else made me feel like I could actually do this." On their first day, the owner gathered them in the service bay, the same spot where, months ago, a customer had been ignored while waiting for help. "Look around," she told them. "This is your space now. Not because I say so, but because you earned it by showing up. Don't let anyone, yourself included, tell you otherwise." After the orientation, Lena, the young woman from the front desk, stayed behind. She walked up to the owner holding a small toolkit she'd just been issued. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." The owner didn't say, "You're welcome." She said, "Might keep showing up. That's how we keep seeing each other." That evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, the owner locked up the dealership. She paused before getting into her car, looking back at the building. The lights were still on in the service bay, someone staying late to finish a job. The front sign flickered slightly in the breeze, but it held strong. She thought about the grandfather who'd taught her that a business is only as good as the way it treats the least powerful person who walks through the door. She thought about the woman she'd been on that first Tuesday. Hurt, yes, but determined not to let that moment define the place. Now it didn't, because the cycle had been broken. Not with anger, not with punishment, but with patience, consistency, and the radical act of believing people can change, including yourself. She got into her car, started the engine, and drove home through streets lit by streetlights and porch lamps. Somewhere a dog barked. A couple walked hand in hand. A teenager practiced skateboard tricks on a quiet sidewalk. Ordinary life. And in the middle of it, a car dealership, once a symbol of exclusion, had become a place where anyone could walk in and be told, simply and truly, "You belong here." That was enough, more than enough. It was everything.